I'll call this meeting of the Clackamas County Commission to order and ask you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You've got my thing. The first item on our agenda is citizen communication, and the first person on citizen communication is our esteemed mayor from Happy Valley, Lori Dreamer, and your staff if you want him.
I think we're good. Good morning, Commission, Chair Lehan, and Commissioners. Thanks for having me. Originally, we were here for the agenda item, annexation of Mount Talbert, and that's been pulled from the agenda, so we're just here to let you know that we're still very much in favor of the annexation. City of Happy Valley wants to continue the partnership with Metro and CPRD and the Commissioners, so when that agenda comes to work session, which I understand it will in the near future, we just make sure we're at the table so we can support and or come to an agreement on this. So I just wanted to make sure you knew we were still thought this very important and we didn't want it to just drop off.
Yeah,
So.
and perhaps you could mention why the change.
There were some last-minute questions that came up about notification, and then I realized for myself I was less educated than I should be on it. So we thought it wasn't an ultimately urgent matter. Let's take a little time and make sure we understand what's going on, and we will certainly work to include you when it comes back and make sure Happy Valley is knowledgeable about this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. And
Commissioner Bernard.
I just wanted to add that I'm very supportive of the concept, and there was some question about whether people knew about it. Of course, you always hear that.
Sure.
You know, you knock on doors, leave cards, send a mailer, call them, but there was some concern about that. So I asked, is there some issue that we need to make sure people knew about, and certainly provide an opportunity for people to come and testify. But I think it's a great plan. I'm all for it. Can't wait till it gets back on the agenda so
Perfect.
I can vote yes.
Thank you. Okay.
I just wanted to say, just for at least the audience out there, and maybe for clarification, if you can add anything, Lori, and that is, as I understand it, the purpose of annexing this is, it will be within the boundaries of the city if successful, and the purpose is just to offer Happy Valley's level of code enforcement for greater protection, which is actually enhanced above our code protection or enforcement program we have here at Clackamas County. And I don't know of any other issues, so do you?
No, that's why I was somewhat surprised that it was coming off the agenda, but I think it's fine to answer the citizens' comments. I don't see if it's not pressing, just I think being on the same page. But yes, code enforcement is exactly the reason that this partnership's come about. I think working with Scouters Mountain and all this with Metro, and we do need to pay attention and have code enforcement. And at this time, we're finding that the county's level of that is not as adequate as the city of Happy Valley. So that's why the annexation is necessary. So I think the comments, the concerns are coming from maybe some past history of years and years ago. That's all I can think of. So
Yeah, this is in a way an example or even an opportunity to kind of let some people know the advantages of incorporating, is that some cities do have a greater level of code enforcement, and so those people seeking that that are outside cities rely on the county, and we have a very large territory, so it's very difficult for us. But the cities sometimes have better resources in a small area to do just that. So congratulations for having a better level of code enforcement.
thank you. Okay, thank
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate
We'll get it back on the agenda as soon as we can. Second card I have is Jeff Goodman.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Goodman. I reside at 4088 Orchard Way in Lake Oswego. I am here today. I'm also a member of the Lake Oswego City Council, although I'm here today speaking on my own and not representing the City Council, although my fellow council members are aware that I am here today. three topics to talk about with respect to the proposed streetcar between Portland and Lake Oswego: benefit and cost, state funding, and the retention of bus service between Oregon City, West Linn, and Portland. There's no question that a streetcar brings benefit, but it's not just a question of benefit, it is a question of benefit compared to costs. In addition, it is not just a question of benefit and costs within a particular project, but the benefit and costs of that particular project weighed against all the other projects within the city. That is one of the reasons why I've raised substantial opposition and skepticism to this particular project at this time. But I should emphasize that that opposition is not opposition to transit projects, be they bikeways, pathways, truck improvement for freight. It is just simply opposition to this project at this time, while at the same time acknowledging that there are benefits to the streetcar. State funding. Some of the commissioners today heard that the state of Oregon has no money in its budget to provide funding to go to the final environmental impact statement, which will come out in sometime in early 2013. The estimated cost of that is $25 million, $14 million to come from the state. The governor did not include it in his budget he submitted to the legislature. The legislature did not put it in. If you can't do an FEIS, you don't have a project. The state does not see as much value in this project as it does for other projects elsewhere in the state. Lastly, the retention of bus service between Oregon City, West Linn, and Portland. It's an admirable request, but it carries with it certain implications. If you retain the bus service as well as the streetcar, the system operating cost savings for TriMet disappear. That was one of the primary justifications for the streetcar. If you retain bus service along the corridor, you have the same number of riders, the ridership doesn't change, but you then split it between the streetcar and the bus. There will be fewer riders on the streetcar, therefore the cost per rider on the streetcar goes up. Another justification removed. Energy. The streetcar is projected to save oil. If this bus remains in, you do not have that savings, or the savings is substantially reduced. Another justification removed. If the bus service stays between Oregon City, West Linn, and Portland, you continue to generate the additional greenhouse gases, which is not meant to be. And I will stop. I thank you for the opportunity.
The next card I have is from Fred Nelligan, I believe. I can't read it.
Good morning. My name is Fred Nelligan. I live in Oak Grove at 15110 Southeast Concord Court. I would like to say, since moving back to Oregon 9 years ago, my wife and I have lived and worked in Oak Grove, living in a beautiful yet unfulfilled community. Our neighborhoods are jewels and wonderful places to live, but the commercial slash through the heart of our community is dreadful and worsens each year. The McLaughlin Commercial Corridor, it's just not our community identity. So what's different today in Oak Grove? The answer is complex. Over the past 2 years, there has been a building energy, vibrancy, and commitment to making Oak Grove something whole, complete, something unique. By knitting our neighborhoods together through renewed planning and revitalization efforts and bringing light rail mass transit to connect us to the Portland metro area. I am currently fortunate to be engaged in several processes of representative government here in Clackamas County. Representative to TriMet Citizens Advisory Committee, making sure all issues and concerns are captured and addressed by TriMet and its partners. Member of the Park Avenue Stakeholders Advisory Group, which is focused on making the Park Avenue area a model for the rest of the commercial corridor. And membership in the Oak Lodge Community Council, where members are working to revitalize Oak Grove and create community identity. I am grateful for the opportunity to serve with so many dynamic people, and I am proud of the energy, time, and skill that so many of these volunteers continue to bring to meetings, open houses, and forums on issues that will impact the success of revitalizing and redefining Oak Grove and successfully implementing light rail. So why am I now so involved? For 25 years, I fit the typical working adult profile: commute, work, family, spouse, and more work. The majority of adults of voting age consistently talk about how chaotic and busy and challenging our lives are to manage. The majority of voting adults are just way too busy even to read the newspaper anymore, let alone to keep up with all the details behind the local and state issues being worked. The reason the United States has been so successful as a country is the foundation upon which it was built: representative government. For 235 years, it has allowed Americans to focus on their day-to-day lives, working and building this country into something formidable, and being assured their elected representatives were working on their behalf. In conclusion, please do not allow those who only want the status quo and limited government to usurp the faith and trust in our representative government, that foundation which our country has been built. And please do not discount the time, energy, skill, and inspiration volunteers have been and continue to be making for the betterment of our neighborhoods, communities, and greater Clackamas County. Your electorate is counting on them whether they realize it or not. So my concern is putting any vote before the voters these days where they do not have the time to look into and learn the multiple of complex details and issues is going to be defeating to our community. I think the very core of our healthy and vibrant communities would stagnate and implode. And lastly, I just want to say I support light rail coming to Oak Grove. I support the revitalization efforts to the entire length of McLaughlin Boulevard, and I support my elected Board of County Commissioners to continue leading us forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Questions, anyone? No. Did you have a question or a comment?
Well, I really appreciate the input on this issue. We've heard a wide range of perspectives, and it's great to have a broad range that encompasses the views of a broad community. I think that a couple points have really come to my mind in the last weeks as we've been thinking increasingly about how we're going to pay for the commitment we've made to Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail. And one of those points is we have made a commitment to pay for Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail. We have entered into a contract to provide a $25 million investment to help this project happen. That's less than 3% of the total cost of a project. It's not going to just benefit our community, but provide 14,000 jobs, keep cars off of the road so that we don't have to do expensive road repairs, and provide some great opportunities for economic revitalization in the area. And it's an important and good commitment, but it's also a commitment. And in Clackamas County, I think we need to be clear, when you enter into a contract, you fulfill your obligations under that contract. And I believe we have a strong board majority that absolutely stands firm to make sure that we honor our contracts and we honor the great volunteer work that our community members have put into this project.
Well, I'd like to add a couple of things. One thing about the economy is that the only way we're going to turn this around is to create jobs. But our agreement goes beyond when we were here. Actually, in July 24, 2008, Board Order 2008-130 actually says, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners support Milwaukee Light Rail, LPA, and generally include the following: a new Willamette River Bridge for light rail, buses, streetcars, bicycles, and pedestrians along a refined Porter-Sherman light rail line near OMSI, the Milwaukee Light Rail alignment that follows the Tillamook Branch alignment, and the southern terminus at Park Avenue. There was also a commitment on the part of the board that they expect an active and proactive citizen involvement effort. And that is what you're testifying, that is actually happening. I own a business in Milwaukee that was founded by my grandfather in 1925, and I continue to own it and run it. It's an automotive repair business, but I actually drive McLaughlin, well, until I got this job for many, many, many years. And it has changed considerably. I also went to school, LaSalle High School, on 82nd Avenue back in the, I don't know if I want to tell you, the 70s, which there really basically were a lot of empty lots. There were manufactured home sales lots and a very rough neighborhood when I was there in the 70s. McLaughlin is going that same direction. There are more strip clubs now than there are really retail outlets. And that continues to grow. While some of them don't last, thank goodness, others do. There's now a place you can actually stop by and pick up your marijuana to make sure your medical needs are addressed. I have some concerns about that. G.I. Joe's is gone, and now Walmart's looking at purchasing property. And I have had a long career fighting Walmarts, which actually, in my opinion, destroy downtowns and will work against any Walmart along McLaughlin Boulevard in the near future. There are lots of opportunities for McLaughlin. It will change, and I am totally of an opinion that light rail will be the catalyst that will move McLaughlin to grow again and become the vital retail opportunity that citizens of Oak Grove, Milwaukee, and all of Clackamas County will look forward to. So thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you. And the last card I have is Richard Langdon.
Good morning. Now I'll be short today. Our group wanted to make sure we continue to be represented until all alleged, well, actually the only alleged code violation has been removed from the one property and all properties, frankly, that have mobile food carts on them, since a mobile food cart code does not exist. It was made clear at a meeting here just a day ago. A couple of days ago, but so we'll be here until that gets removed, and hopefully that'll be done soon. We're working on some things, as you know, and I'd like for the commissioners to encourage those folks in staff to get that done very quickly. And also, our group would also like to thank Commissioner Paul Savas for being the champion for reform of ZDO 1102. That's really the biggest problem here. It has to do with a provision in the code that allows the staff to fabricate codes at any time about anything they wish. And that needs to go away or simply be calmed down so that it's not so onerous to the citizens. I can't tell you how many citizens have come to me and been so encouraged by Commissioner Paul Savas, his common sense, integrity, his courage. And they wanted to thank him, and I want to thank him. Thank you, Paul. I'm done for today. See you next week.
Okay, I don't have any other cards.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
I didn't know how much public comment was left, but I'll start with following up after Mr. Nelligan's comments where everyone else jumped in. And I just, first of all, I guess I'd like to just make sure that, we put out good information and accurate information. And I just want to, I know the last count that we did, I've had a business on McLaughlin Boulevard for the last 26 years in the unincorporated area. And within that unincorporated area, we've ranged between 330 and 440 businesses. I would probably say that, just from my review of those numbers in the past, that probably a good 10 or 15, 20% at least is retail. I believe there's a total maximum at any one time in that unincorporated area that I know of 3 strip clubs. So to state that there's more strip clubs than there are retail outlets is just surely inaccurate. I mean no harm by saying that, but I think it's fair to be honest that there's not more retail outlets or less retail outlets than there are strip clubs. And I know that about 3 weeks ago we had quite a few people attending as a result maybe of the previous Tuesday urban renewal discussion. We had some people testify before us, and one of the things that one of the folks had mentioned in their testimony was public involvement. I think my comments were, let's make sure we've done our share of public involvement, and I would agree that maybe since the beginning of 2009 we've done a great job. However, I think that part of the community that was very well engaged, and much to the credit of then Mayor Bernard, Milwaukee got fantastic, I thought, really good, reasonable public involvement from July 24th, 2008 and prior. They got adequate public involvement on this issue. However, it was the rest of the county, and especially the area south, that got very little. And there was a number of efforts to the county commissioners and to the chair at that time that they wanted to be involved prior to that decision and give public testimony. I happened to be here on July 24th, 2008 to speak just to that issue that we were left out. Since that time, I think the Board of County Commissioners, past and present, have been very responsive. I give them credit for being far more responsive and engaging the community, and Fred's a part of that. I appreciate all the citizens' input and efforts and commitment to those public processes. I think they have been very good. There are some assurances and comments that were made by the county, both its electeds and both some of the staff, and there's been for whatever reasons been some inconsistencies with those. Maybe whether that's really not the issue here today, but I just thought that I'm of the belief that we ought to be delivering consistent and accurate information. I think that's our job and our role. So with that, to speak to Mr. Langdon's comments, basically, we did have a meeting. I thank the board for several weeks ago when we departed from our scripted discussion here to indeed engage the group and let them air their concerns. We did that. I appreciate the commissioners who participated. We had our meeting last Tuesday. I think we came out with a pretty decent outcome towards the end. I hope that we can be constructive from here on out. It was identified in that meeting that 1102 was maybe could use some clarity and use some clarification as far as how it's applied. So just to be accurate, I think that was, to put that in context, at least that was my statement and my goal. So how we get there, hopefully staff and others can be helpful in making sure we get that clarity so that we don't have a situation like this recur. So that's really all I have in regard to that. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Bernard.
I think that one statement Mr. Langdon made is not true. Fabrication of a code it was no fabrication of a code. The planning director in that code is given the ability to apply that code by the statute itself, by the code itself. And the planning director, I mentioned the other day that when I was mayor, we had very similar issues. You cannot possibly write a code that addresses future business opportunities or future changes in the environment without having some general application. And sometimes we left that to the planning director, and the planning director in this code was actually given that. I was mentioning the other day that down at the legislature they're looking at dog agility, and I was watching a show the other day and they have rabbit agility now. So does the code, I guess that when it came to planning director and somebody wanted to do a rapid agility court, would the planning director have to say, well, we don't have a code on that, or would they apply something that may be similar to that code? And as far as light rail, believe me, I can't even count how many citizen meetings we had in Milwaukee that numerous citizens, probably, now I exaggerated on the strip club, so I want to be a little careful, a large number of citizens from Oak Grove did attend those meetings, and Metro had them, and the city of Milwaukee had them, and I had many, many, many hearings where citizens came, as well as, of course, newspaper articles and the Oregonian and the Review and all other kinds of things. So there was an adequate opportunity. And when it was decided to go to Park Avenue, immediately a committee was set up and grants were offered and people got involved. And I've attended a number of those also at the Elks Club to talk about that. What I meant about the strip clubs really is that there have been numerous attempts to open strip clubs on McLaughlin when there used to be a great restaurant, for example, Stuart Anderson's, a great restaurant that failed because really what else is there to draw people onto McLaughlin these days? There are, of course, great businesses. There's paint stores, there's hardware stores, there's, but the old Piggly Wiggly, if you're familiar with Milwaukee, has been empty for so many years. It has a for lease sign on it. For a while, it was a discount food store, and they moved to another location. And now it's just sitting there empty. And that little mall, I drove by it the other day, which used to be a very active, exciting place, has very few businesses in there at all anymore. And I'm amazed that some of those have survived. And of course, G.I. Joe's was actually a viable business, but that corporation decided to actually suck the money out of it and close it down is what happened with that. And so, I mean, there is a lot of opportunity on McLaughlin, and I totally support a plan to somehow revitalize McLaughlin thanks to the hard work of the citizens. And I don't want to discount their concerns and their efforts to make that project happen and to make it one that will turn McLaughlin back to what it used to be, a great place to live, work, and play.
I guess since we're discussing McLaughlin at some length, and I didn't know we would be, but I feel like I should throw in my perspective as someone who is not from that area. I'm from Wilsonville, and but I have visited McLaughlin over the years since the 60s. And as an outsider, I think it's important to have the perspective of an outsider who goes there to shop. And I couldn't tell you how many of this business or that business there are, but I can tell you that as an outsider visiting McLaughlin, as a consumer, McLaughlin over the years has deteriorated. I think there's no secret to that. The reasons to go to McLaughlin have decreased from where they were in the 70s when there were many retail opportunities on McLaughlin and a wide variety of significant anchors. And gradually they've been replaced with less attractive retail outfits or outlets for the general population to be coming there for a retail experience. And at this point in time, now that I am more involved with McLaughlin, I view it as really our Clackamas County's diamond in the rough. It has so much potential, and it was launching itself in that direction back in the 70s, and I don't know what happened to create the downward trend in the 80s or whatever, but I think we have the opportunity to reverse that, to make it really a fabulous attractive boulevard for Clackamas County, and I look forward to doing that. I know there are many citizens who are working in that direction because the reputation of Oak Grove is, for good or ill, it depends on McLaughlin, because that's what most people see of Oak Grove. And it's not until you get off of McLaughlin that you see the what a wonderful community Oak Grove is, and how engaged the citizens are in that area. But for the rest of the world, who 90% of them spend 90% of their time on McLaughlin, Oak Grove's their vision of Oak Grove is not as good as it could be or should be, and I look forward to reversing that and getting it to be the attraction that it should be for Clackamas County. And I'm going to move on from this because
Madam
it isn't
Chair?
really yes.
If I can, I mean, I didn't know we were going to expand into that much, but I just
Well,
wanted.
I really don't want to get into a back and forth on McLaughlin or whatever. Why don't you save your comments for commissioner concerns, and we'll get into that. Otherwise, we're into a hole. We've gone further down this path probably than we usually do. So with that, I want to go ahead and take care of the consent agenda, since there are no other discussion items. And I will ask the clerk to read the consent agenda items by title only.
Okay. Under Health, Housing and Human Services, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Molalla, Molalla Adult Center to provide social services for Clackamas County residents, approval of a professional, technical, and consultant service contract with LifeWorks Northwest to provide mental health services, approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with the State of Oregon Commission on Children and Families for the receipt of state grant funds for the 2011-2013 biennium, approval of an agreement with Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon for jobs access and reverse commute operation funding for the travel, training, and the Catch a Ride programs, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services for operations of the Community Development Disability Programs for Clackamas County, board order to appoint a county financial assistant administrator for the 2011-2013 intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services for the operations of Community Developmental Disability Program. Under the Department of Transportation and Development, approval of a contract with Granite Construction Company for the 82nd Drive preservation, the Highway 212 to Lawnfield Road and King Road preservation, and the Wichita Avenue to Hollywood Avenue project. Approval of a contract with Knife River Corporation Northwest for the Stafford Road preservation, the Advance Road to Rosemont Road and Childs Road preservation, and the Stafford Road to 65th Avenue project. Approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County and the City of Molalla to provide land use planning services. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes. And under the Juvenile Department, approval to apply for the Edward Burns Memorial Justice Assistant Grant Program for fiscal year 2011. And that's it.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Damon that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on any of the consent agenda items? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Passes unanimously, and I would remind the audience that all these items are available online, and the viewing audience can see it now. If you want more detail on any of the items that we just read by title. And that brings us to Commissioner Communication, and then, so I will start with Commissioner Savas.
Well, thank you, Chair Lehan. While you were speaking about McLaughlin, I was very grateful. I think I was agreeing with you all the way up until the end about that the vision there needs to be better or it's not good enough. Those aren't the exact words, but I just want to say that the Board of County Commissioners approved the vision, values, and guiding principles document from McLaughlin last year. Number of our engaged citizens put their heart and soul into that project, and I believe not only did the county commissioners approve the document and the vision, values, and guiding principles, but they complimented the group on those vision, values, and guiding principles. So perhaps it was just a miscommunication or a misspeak, but I believe the vision, and I think we're actually building upon that vision. And you did mention during there, which is quite accurate. Yes, in the 70s, it was kind of a vibrant place. In the 80s, it kind of went downhill, and having a lot of history there and knowing a lot of the families and a lot of the business owners, and I've lived there again for 26 years. What happened in the 80s is that the Clackamas Town Center project began, and when that Clackamas Town Center opened, a number of the retailers, a number of the shopping moved there because that became the center of the retail activity in Clackamas County, and that's the reason that the area somewhat dried up. People wanted to go to the new shopping center and go to see all those new niceties and so forth. So it kind of dried up, but that wasn't the first hit. The first hit McLaughlin took was when I-5 opened, because McLaughlin Boulevard, Highway 99 was the superhighway, and when I-5 actually opened, a lot of that traffic obviously ceased to exist, and people then commuted along I-5 as opposed to along 99E. So the first impact that the boulevard hit then was due to the I-5, and then secondly, the town center. So I didn't really have any of that really scripted or planned today, but I did save something, and hopefully on the lighter side of things. Commissioner Leininger quoted Edmund Burke last week, and I was really struck by that, and we had lunch on another issue later on, and she suggested I go back and read some of his quotes. So I did, and I just thought I would really put Mr. Burke's quote in context. It was very interesting, so if you would indulge me. The quote was, I believe, your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment, and he betrays you instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. Somewhat touching on the dialogue we had here earlier about the role of representation. But in his speech in 1774, how that came about, and I'll just start at the beginning here, it ought to be the happiness and glory of a representative to live in the strictest nation, the closest correspondence, and the most reserved communication with his constituents. Their wishes ought to have great weight with him, their opinion, high respect, their business, unremitted attention. It is his duty to sacrifice his repose, his pleasures, his satisfactions to theirs, and above all, ever, and in all cases, to prefer their interest to his own. But his unbiased opinion, his mature judgment, his enlightened conscience, he ought not to sacrifice to you, to any man, or to any set of men living. These he does not derive from your pleasure, no, nor from the law and constitution. They are a trust from Providence for the abuse of which he is deeply answerable. Your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment, and he betrays you instead of serving you if he sacrifices it to your opinion. I've had a number of people look at this paragraph and take a lot of different meanings out of it, and it's not, I think, that you really derive that, maybe any one conclusion, but it is really a great study to really consider because, representative or governance goes back hundreds and hundreds of years and different opinions on how to do that, all the way back to Aristotle, who, so to speak, is the founder of democracy. But it is interesting to really put that in context, but I think that we at least owed the folks to at least have the whole paragraph.
Commissioner Leininger.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about a very big decision that I have recently made, of which some of you may be aware, and that is I've decided that I'm not going to run for reelection to my seat on the county commission at the end of 2012 when my term is up. And I'm also not going to run for county chair, which is something I had been thinking about. And instead, because those campaigns, as anyone in the audience or viewing knows, are very, very major undertakings. And right now, I feel like I want to focus my energy on two things. One is being a strong and independent voice on the Board of County Commissioners during a challenging time, and the other is to be an active and present person in my family. I have young kids, and I think that that's an important perspective. And as the gentleman who spoke from Oak Lodge noted, it's also a time-consuming, wonderful project. So some people have said to me in the last month or two since I've made that decision, gosh, Ann, what are you thinking? This is really to your political disadvantage. It would be a great time for you to run. What are you thinking? And to that, I respond that good leaders understand that sometimes you need to do things to your political disadvantage because it's good for children and for families. And on that theme, I also think about the public safety levy, which we are going to be making some final decisions on in the coming weeks. We are going to be continuing with the support, hopefully, of the community. We'll have a chance to continue a source of revenue that supports public safety in Clackamas County up to the tune of about $9 million a year. And there has been some discussion about what should be some of the uses of that funding, should we have the opportunity to continue it. Some would say it should continue to go strictly to the sheriff's office for important work that they do. And I am advocating that a modest portion of that money be directed to support domestic violence prevention and child abuse prevention services in our community, because those are part of public safety too. And while there's been some decrease, as the sheriff noted, and in some material he provided, in crimes against property and crimes against people in Clackamas County in the last 4 years, there's been a surge in demand for the other services. There's been a 100% increase in confirmed cases of child abuse in Clackamas County since 2004. Last year, there were 1,480 shelter requests that were turned away, domestic violence shelter requests, according to United Way study from 2010, because of lack of space in Clackamas County. And according to the same study, there were 10 people who were killed in Clackamas County as a result of domestic violence incidents. So some people have said to me, Ann, this position you're taking is to your great political disadvantage, because there are some very strong interests that would like to have the funding go to the places that it has gone before. And to them as well, I say that good leaders know that sometimes you need to act against your personal political advantage to do something that is good for children and families. And that's what I am going to do actively for the remainder of my term here on the Board of County Commissioners. And I welcome all of you to support that, and I look forward to my colleagues on the board supporting that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Damon, or?
Okay, I've got a couple things. I don't have 10 points, as I said at our study session. Just a couple things. I've been thinking a lot about the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail and the call for a vote from some folks in the community, and my inbox is full of both sides, and I've been getting up to speed on all of these issues, and I had to reel back just a little bit around the content and look at the process. I'm a process person by nature, and I just started thinking about why are some of these folks calling for a vote? What is it that they're looking for? And what I came to was that a vote is often a symptom of unrest, discontent, distrust, or just wanting a different outcome. And it can also be a kind of a public outcry for inclusion in decision making. And I have to wonder that I don't know how a vote will help us in the kind of decision that we need to make with regard to this legal contract that we have about the $25 million. Because where the public could be really helpful for us, I think, is in where that money comes from. We've got some real trade-offs. There's going to be a business meeting, a full discussion in 2 weeks about this that I'm going to miss because I'll be in Washington, D.C., but I will get up to speed. But I know that there's, the staff is working hard to look at all the options, sort of where that money comes from, what that means to other programs, what that means to what we're trying to do. And I would say that is where we really need some input and some guidance and some help in looking at those trade-offs and looking at what that means to other programs in other areas. So for folks that are looking for a way to have their voice be a part of our conversations, I would put that my emerging, evolving thinking is I think that would be where it would be most helpful. So that's one thing. The other part is about the public safety levy, and I've been thinking about this one quite a lot, and I really feel like, number one, the levy has got to pass this fall. It's of critical importance, and I know that there's a lot of concern about, with our depressed economy, it's very difficult to ask people for increased fees or increased taxes, increase anything, and that across the board, there's a sensitivity to folks saying no, please don't ask us for anything more, and I respect that, and I think that, and I hear the folks that bundle kind of our sort of that bundle our voters with, well, look at what happened with the vehicle registration fee, that went down. And so, we can't this is the climate we're working in around public safety. And I have to say, I guess I think our public, our community I think they're bigger than that. I think that folks that voted down a vehicle registration fee, from the people that I talked to, that they're not necessarily the same people that would vote down a public safety levy if it was a more comprehensive case about the dynamic nature of crime in our communities. And I don't know what all that means other than to say I do think we need to put our best foot forward this fall and make a strong, compelling case to our public about the dynamic nature of crime in our communities, what's happening, what we need to do as a county to work to address that. How much of that is relates to domestic violence, the way Commissioner Leininger represented. I think that if those crimes are on the rise, that needs to be part of what we're trying to address as a part of the public safety levy. And we need to work together to do that. And I guess I have a lot of faith that our public, if we make a compelling case about what's happening in our community in a comprehensive way, that our community would say, they're not just going to vote blindly no. They're going to say, no, this is compelling, and we need to support this. So that's that. I have 4 points, actually. The third one is food carts. And I really appreciate the meeting that we had on Tuesday. I think that it was a good start. I'm really pleased that Dan Chandler and Mr. Langdon have been working so closely together on the issues specific to your site. I agree with Commissioner Savas that that I think a good compromise, or some place that we can look to some updating of 1102 is to look at at least a listing of some kinds of uses that are subject to 1102 to give it some clarity, recognizing that I don't know that we can fold in rapid agility or all the things that we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I think that it would give some clarity and at least let people know what's included in that envelope. So I support that, and I thought it was a good meeting, and I look forward to the continued conversation. So I do have one lighter note, my last point, which is we are in full summer swing in our communities. There's any number of fairs, festivals, farmers markets, outdoor concerts, just across the board going on in the county. Sandy Mountain Days last weekend, was fantastic. Estacada Summerfest is coming up in 2 weeks. This weekend is the Milano Pancake Breakfast. I'll be out there. So I want to end on a high note that get out in our communities. I think my mailbox is not only full of different sides of Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail, but it's full of invitations to fairs and concerts and parades and festivals across the county. And my family's looking forward to attending as many as we can.
Bishop Bernard.
All right. One thing that's happening this weekend is the National Association of Counties Conference, which will bring thousands, and I'm not exaggerating, thousands of commissioners and their families to Portland. So I hope that they will take advantage of some of the opportunities that Clackamas County offers, and we actually do have a bunch of tours set up. I'm on the Public Safety Advisory Committee for the National Association. So I'm excited about the conversation nationally about the area. And I'm going to go back to McLaughlin just a little bit because you're actually right. I mean, Clackamas Town Center, I-5 did have make a difference. The problem is that often in those kind of situations, people give up. In downtown Milwaukee, for example, it disturbs me to this day that they didn't hold their ground on specific designs. For example, on Main Street, there is an office that looks like a house that replaced a building that burned down. So, and it's a dentist office, a surgery office. And that isn't the kind of thing that should have been allowed to happen on a main street. Being involved in Milwaukee's planning over the years, you need that connectivity. Even a half a block makes a difference on whether you're going to walk further down the block. It's kind of interesting, and so holding the line. I think Wilsonville this weekend, there's a big Fred Meyer's opening. It's a fantastic project. Is it 170 acres?
No, it's 17.
Oh, see,
say.
It's 17.
It's 17 acres. It's a great project that really Wilsonville held the line. This is what it's going to be, and really, it's important that we come to a resolution, and Graymore did, and now it is the model. It's the model of how to do these projects. And actually, I even heard some conversation about how they were going to treat, the customers, how they went through different lines and stuff is changing. And again, they're going to use that as a model. So I think it's important that we hold the line. I think the urban rural reserve process was also a great process. And one of the things I said during that testimony is that it reminds me of the Seinfeld, where you reserve land for industrial development. I heard it just the other day. We need large lot land, and we do save them. But when somebody comes along with a big Home Depot, all of a sudden that's no longer industrial land; it's Home Depot, and that's also true with some Walmarts. That they come to big, large lot industrial land, and instead they put a Walmart in a little mall that eventually struggles. But we need to hold the line and say, if this is industrial land, this is industrial land. Wilsonville has a great piece of industrial land that nobody looks at, actually, because it's lacking some infrastructure. I think water, maybe sewer, isn't all the way there. It's to the prison, needs to go across the street, lots of acreage. I don't know why we're not really investing in projects like that. So, I mean, it's hold the line and work for the best. Also, this weekend at the Farmers Market, a film crew's coming in to film a national program. And they're using our Milwaukee Sunday Farmers Market as part of that program. They're also touring. It's funded through tourism, Clackamas County. It's a great. I'm excited that it's an investment that the Tourism Board decided to invest in. And back to something else Paul said is I spent a lot of time, I read the Federalist Papers because there's a lot of things that I hear all the time is, what's the basis of the Constitution? Why did people make their decisions to do this or that? And so I went through the Federalist Paper and I'm working on reading about all the early presidents and some of the people who created this country, this great country. Yesterday, I was actually in a near-death experience, and it's in a police chase. I pulled up after going to a Wesleyan Rotary meeting, and there was a cop car stopped in the middle of McLaughlin Boulevard with its lights on, and I'm pulling off, and I'm wondering, what's going on here? I mean, I'm looking for sirens and stuff, and so I decide I'm going to pull on McLaughlin, and I think, wait, I better stop. And all of a sudden, this guy comes by at 100 miles an hour, 4 inches, 6 inches from my door, and I drive a smart car, 5-star rated, but at 100 miles an hour, I thought, this guy would have killed me. But he went through traffic. I'm assuming it's a he. Not that men are better drivers. But this guy obviously had some vast racing experience because he went through huge, must have been 50 cars and onto the on-ramp onto 205 at least 100 miles an hour. And I was thinking there that every day you see people with signs, help me feed my pet or whatever. And I just couldn't help but wondering if they lived through that because he went back on that freeway. But I thought, I'm going to talk to the sheriff, and I'm sure that, and I don't even know whether it was state police or sheriff that was chasing him because he went by so fast. But, what are our policies for chasing? I don't know what this person did, and I was going to call Under Sheriff Dave Kirby to see if he knew what it was, but a lot of people's lives were put at risk yesterday in this chase, and it'd be interesting to find out or discuss what that chase policy is. I mean, not that I would ever want to change it, but I certainly was concerned about the risk to the lives of all those people, and there must have. I don't want to exaggerate. Excuse me. 50 cars, I'm sure I'm very close. And, one car, there could be 100 people's lives who are at risk. And one smart car, one stupid guy driving a smart car who decided to pull on McLaughlin in the middle of a police chase. So I'm glad I assume everybody was safe yesterday. And our Sheriff's Department, State Police, and local police departments really do a great job. Thank you.
We're glad you're okay.
Thank you. Yes. First, let me start by saying I'm glad that your near-death experience was a miss. Shoot, I didn't even know that. Oh. Apparently, she missed it. I want to remind people that we do not have a business meeting next Thursday, and because I think a couple or three, we don't have a quorum. Several of us are off doing other things next week. We have, however, as Commissioner Damon said, set for July 28th. We've asked for a presentation on some of the issues around funding our obligation for Milwaukee Light Rail. So that will be a much fuller discussion that we will be having on our business meeting on the 28th, but that will not be next week. I do want to clarify that I am entirely supportive of the vision process for McLaughlin. I'm just, my intention was just to give the outsider's opinion, and I know that, or the clueless shopper's opinion. But I have worked the other side of this for the better part of 2 decades with the city of Wilsonville in terms of development. And I know that that there are many things. The retail world is always dynamic. Anything that changes traffic patterns or competition changes the dynamic of the retail mix, and I have been educated by some of the top marketing and retail experts in the country about the critical nature of that mix, the cross between art and science that a good manager, whether it's of a main street or a mall or a little shopping center, the mix of retailers that are put together is critical to the success of the whole center, and it is constantly changing, and that is true in Wilsonville as well. This afternoon we will be opening the Fred Meyer, actually officially opening tomorrow morning, but some of the festivities begin this evening for the 17 acres, which is Fred Meyer in Wilsonville. It is a project that I have worked many years on, both on the design side and the mix side. And what we did hold the line on in terms of design standards, but also preserving the old church, which is right in the middle of this development, and making it work for Boone's Ferry Road. And I think it's a fabulous looking center as it's come together. But having said that, I know it will have negative impacts on other shopping areas in Wilsonville because they're already moving out of other shopping areas and into this one, tenants. And this is that constant flux that you have. So there's the upside and the downside. But one of the unique things about this project is that it does include workforce housing. This is the first that Fred Meyers has really gotten behind this, and largely to the credit of Graymore developers who did the outside development. And Fred Meyers, of course, did their store, but it was a partnership, and it will have workforce housing in it. And I think that's an important step to a whole lot of values that we have in terms of reducing transit times and making it affordable for the people who work in the community to live in the community. This project altogether is 400, something like 400 jobs at Fred Meyers and the other shops, includes a number of restaurants. So we're looking forward to it. I do have to say, on behalf of Fred Meyers and Graymore, that they have been very good to work with over the years, and we do have high standards in the city of Wilsonville. I'm speaking as a former mayor now, but we also work closely to make sure that our developers are successful. And one of the things that Fred Meyer did when we did not have capacity, if anyone has been to Wilsonville understands that we are under construction in a big way with the ODOT interchange to increase capacity at that interchange and still keep it functional for pedestrians and bicyclists because it's where our neighborhoods are on either side of Interstate 5, and we have to keep those connections for kids who are not of driving age to get back and forth and around town. But they have been very good at working with us with ODOT to get that interchange fixed, and they are the ones who stepped aside when we were at a moratorium level on transportation at that interchange. It was Fred Meyers who stepped aside for Villebois and Costa Pacific to be able to proceed on the west side of Wilsonville because there weren't enough traffic trips for both of those huge projects to go forward until these changes were made at the interchange. And while Fred Meyers was in front place, in the front of the line, they stepped back and let Costa Pacific go forward ahead of them and wait for the agreement with ODOT to improve that interchange. So Fred Meyers has been, and Graymore have been excellent partners throughout this long process, and I think the product is just fabulous, and invite everyone to go and see it, and businesses will be opening on through the summer there as it gets going. So do come and see it. And once the interchange is a big mess right now, but once it is done, it will function smoothly for all modes. That's our goal. And with that, I was going to say the things that Commissioner Damon said, so I don't need to say those. There are so many things going on in Clackamas County that are fun, and we're working up towards the county fair in August, and then the state fair at the end of August. And one of the things Clackamas County has, I thought you would mention, is we have a tremendous involvement in 4-H. In our county. If we're not the top county, we are certainly one of the top counties for kids involved in 4-H and agriculture in Clackamas County, and you see our representation is very high, and there's still time. I'm not in 4-H, but I'm presuming there is still time if you have a project to get together for either the county fair or the state fair, but we always make a tremendous showing from Clackamas County, and I want to thank all the kids and adults who are involved in 4-H, because this is high season for 4-H. And with that, if there's nothing else before the commission, we are adjourned.